The following is a review for critical, analytical, and educational purposes only, and is protected under Article 17 and 107 in the United States Fair Use Code. This video is not an infringement on copyright. Please enjoy the video.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Trilbee, and because of the upcoming Monsters University, I thought I would take a look at the movie that started it all, 2001's Monsters, Inc. Ever since setting box office records in 2010 with Toy Story 3, as well as earning huge critical praise, people consider Pixar to be on a slippery downward slope because both Cars 2 and Brave both performed way below their normal expectations, both critically and financially. It was really only the huge merchandising of Cars 2 that actually made it turn a decent profit, whereas Brave was considered quite a disappointment despite winning Best Animated Feature at the Oscars last year. But overall, I think that the spark has sort of run out. I can't deny that Cars 2 and Brave are decent animated films, but looking back on previous Pixar movies such as Finding Nemo, Ratatouille, Toy Story, A Bug's Life, The Incredibles, I feel like the creative spark has definitely run out. However, there was one Pixar movie that I hadn't seen in a long time, and that was Monsters, Inc. So to prepare for the upcoming prequel, Monsters University, I thought that I would give it a rewatch after over a decade to see if it still holds up. What's strange is that for kids' films that I saw about a decade ago that I haven't seen since, I normally at least remember specifics if I really liked it, whereas with Monsters, Inc., I just remember liking it and I can't really remember why. So this is going to be personally interesting for me, as I'd just like to know why it seems to have not left that much of a lasting impact, or whether it deserves to be remembered more fondly. But first things first, let's take a closer look at the movie. Monsters, Inc. was released in the US on November 2nd, 2001, and in the UK a few months later on February 8th, 2002. It was distributed by Buena Vista Pictures and developed by Walt Disney Pictures and Pixar Animation Studios. It was directed by Pete Docter, produced by Darla K. Anderson, written by Andrew Stanton and Daniel Jerson, with a story by Pete Docter, Jill Colton, Jeff Pidgeon, and Ralph Eggleston. The movie has the vocal talents of John Goodman, Billy Crystal, Mary Gibbs, Steve Buscemi, Jennifer Tilly, James Coburn, and John Ratzenberger, with music by Randy Newman and editing by Jim Stewart and Robert Graham Jones. It has a running time of 92 minutes, is rated U, with a production budget of $115 million and was a commercial hit, grossing over $560 million at the box office. For a time, it became the second highest grossing animated movie of all time, above Toy Story 2, but below The Lion King. The movie was also nominated for 4 Academy Awards: the very first Best Animated Film Award, which it lost to Shrek, Best Original Score, which it lost to The Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship of the Ring, and Best Sound Editing, which it lost to Pearl Harbor. However, the movie did win Best Original Song for If I Didn't Have You by Randy Newman. So the movie made a really big impact when it was first released, but does it still hold up? Let's find out. The plot takes place in some strange alternative dimension or world where the only people that exist are monsters of various shapes and sizes. In order to power their suburban world, many monsters have to work at Monsters Incorporated, which is kind of like the power station of their world. The monsters travel through bedroom closet doors, which take them to the human world where they scare children and use their screams as a fuel source. And it probably goes without saying that this premise is the best thing about the movie. While Pixar's previous movies, Toy Story, its sequel, and A Bug's Life, took place in the real world, meaning that its locales were based in the real world but just from a different point of view, Monsters, Inc. is the first Pixar movie to take place in a very different environment, and the creativity on display is incredible. Just seeing how this world works and how the screams are collected and the inner workings of Monsters Incorporated is easily the best aspect of the movie. While the concept of monsters just scaring children as a job in an industrial sort of way isn't really an original idea, it wasn't original when the movie first came out, it's the look and the feel of the movie that makes it seem a lot more original and much more energetic than it actually is. The sequence in the first act showing just a normal day at Monsters Incorporated is one of Pixar's all-time best scenes. However, in recent years, human children have become harder and harder to scare, so the company is currently on the downslope. The monsters are also incredibly afraid of children because they believe they carry diseases and could easily kill them. This means that the higher-ups of the company have started to resort to drastic measures in order to keep this world powered. That's where Mike and Sully come in. Sully, played by John Goodman, is a scarer who goes into the human world to collect screams, while Mike, played by Billy Crystal, is his best friend as well as his teammate and organizer. When Sully accidentally releases a human child into the world, they uncover an elaborate conspiracy and need to stop the villains and send the child back home. Truth be told, while the world that this movie takes place in is the best part about the movie, the weakest part is easily the plot and the characters. When you get right down to it, the plot is actually pretty hard to follow, mainly when it comes to the villain's schemes. The most obvious villain is Randall, played by Steve Buscemi, and he's so very, very bland. He has a cool design and the movie finds creative ways of using his chameleon skill set, but his dialogue is bland, he never comes across as a legitimate threat, and he's just really, really boring. The whole movie just feels limp whenever he's on screen. There's also Henry Waternoose, the CEO of Monsters Incorporated, played very well by James Coburn, and at first he comes across as a pretty warm character going through a tough time. Then later on he seems like a reluctant villain who actually seems to regret what he's doing and doesn't like to be a part of it, but then at the end he just devolves into a one-dimensional villain who is just evil and needs to be locked up. Why this movie felt the need to actually make its villain less interesting over the course of the movie just baffles me. Characters who are different shades of grey are far more interesting and memorable than just plain evil villains. I can't have been the only person who was so disappointed to go from Sid to Hopper to the Prospector, three really great animated villains, to these really boring characters. It's such a downgrade from Pixar, and come to think of it, their plan doesn't even really make any sense. They want to kidnap this particular child, but why can't they get another one? What does this scream machine actually do? Yeah, we know it's kind of bad, but we never see its actual effects on children. If Waternoose is in on the plan, then why does Randall keep saying that he'll be running the company? Why does Waternoose feel bad about banishing Sully, his top scarer, when they won't need scarers anymore if their plan comes to fruition? This plot is actually kind of a mess. Thankfully, it is an enjoyable film to sit through because of the main trio, Mike, Sully and the child, who Sully decides to call Boo. While Mike can occasionally be rather annoying, I found the interactions between him and Sully to be very entertaining, and their conflicting personalities bounce off each other really well.
Hey, Mike, this might sound crazy, but I don't think that kid's dangerous.
Really? Well, in that case, let's keep it. I always wanted a pet that could kill me!
Now, look, what if we just put her back in the door?
What?
Mike, think about it. If we send her back, it's like it never happened. Everything goes back to normal.
Is that a joke? Tell me you're joking. Sully, I'd like to think that given the circumstances, I've been extremely forgiving up to now, but that is a horrible idea.
I feel like John Goodman and Billy Crystal don't really get the credit they deserve for these roles. When I see them on screen, I don't hear voice actors in a booth. I hear Mike and Sully. And even though John Goodman pretty much does this type of role in every animated film he's done, he and Billy Crystal clearly get lost in the characters. I also found Sully growing attached to Boo despite being initially terrified of her to feel very organic and genuine. There's also a really clever scene where Sully has to try and reassure her that a monster isn't going to come out of the bedroom closet.
Ah! Ow!
What?
I want to know what is in my pot.
It's just a closet. Will you go to sleep? Hey, that looks like Randall. Randall's your monster. You think he's gonna come through the closet and scare you. Oh boy, how do I explain this? It's empty. See? No monster in here. Well, now there is, but I'm not gonna scare you. I'm off duty.
And even Boo gets her own character arc. We discover early on that Randall is her assigned monster, but over the course of the film we see Sully helping Boo become braver so she can finally face him in the end. There is one very disappointing character aspect between Boo and Sully. One of the most important scenes of the movie is where Sully accidentally frightens Boo, but it never goes anywhere or does anything. Despite the fact that it's presented as the massive emotional turning point of the plot, the next time Boo sees Sully, she's more than happy to accept him again, with their previous encounter never even being mentioned. I can see what it was going for, but the movie just never really went for it. There's also the obligatory scene where Mike and Sully need to fall out, but that's not resolved as well. Sully goes back to save Boo, then a few scenes later Mike literally appears out of nowhere and their argument is never mentioned again. I know that there's a villain scheme that needs to be foiled, but by the end of the movie it just feels like the characters haven't progressed. While I will say that the main characters are enjoyable to watch, I found their emotional centres to be quite lacking. But that's more than can be said for the rest of the supporting cast. Despite this movie taking place in a monster world, the supporting characters are actually pretty dull. There's a couple of creative designs, but if you look in the background in many scenes, you can see some characters who have clearly just been copied and pasted in the background, but with just different colour schemes. While the world itself is imaginative, the monster designs are just a major letdown and it comes across as lazy. Jennifer Tilly as Mike's girlfriend is simply boring, and to be honest, I actually found her entire attitude throughout the film to be very grating, as she seemed very self-centered. I never found Roz to be very funny, even as a kid, and some of the minor characters barely left an impact. The only supporting character I liked was John Ratzenberger as the abominable snowman, as he got some very great lines.
It ain't easy being banished. Yeah, take my buddy Bigfoot. When he was banished, he fashioned an enormous diaper out of poison ivy. Wore it on his head like a tiara. Called himself King Itchy.
There's even a really clever line earlier on explaining how he got stuck in the human world as well as other monsters.
Just think about a few names, will you? Loch Ness, Bigfoot, the Abominable Snowman. They all got one thing in common, pal. Banishment!
So while the characters are quite a mixed bag, the animation itself really does stand the test of time, even 12 years later. The big selling point in the animation department for this film was textures. Toys in Toy Story were predominantly made of plastic, and the insects in A Bug's Life could get away with very basic skin tones. This film really had to sell the look of these monsters, and Pixar really did accomplish that. Textures on skin, or the individual hairs on Sully, and sludge from the slug-like creatures all look great to this very day. The music is really catchy, the variety of locales is great, and the sheer imagination in the climax is simply staggering. The world also looks great because of the pure imagination, especially the door chase in the final act, which is just an absolute thrill to watch. And since we only get a very tiny and basic glimpse into the domestic human world, it means that this movie will age very, very well in coming decades, at least as far as the looks are concerned. Lastability is a very important aspect to animated movies, at least I think so. It's why movies like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs can still be enjoyed almost 80 years after it was first made, but movies like Hotel Transylvania or Dr. Seuss's The Lorax from last year felt dated before they even came out. I personally think that Monsters Inc. will be enjoyed by children for decades to come. But mainly children. That's not me saying that adults can't enjoy this movie, of course not. In fact, I think adults could appreciate the world Pixar has created more than children could. However, I think I now know why I could barely remember anything about this movie before I saw it again. Because emotionally, it doesn't really ring true. Even the very, very end left me quite unsatisfied. Character arcs don't feel resolved, the villains are lame, the supporting cast are dull, and the plot just seems to limp along at the behest of the main characters. However, it does have a fantastically realised world, great animation, a lot of energy, some funny lines, and a decent central relationship. It's good escapism for 92 minutes, but that's really all it is. To be honest, even when compared to the Cars movies or Brave, I think that Monsters Inc. is Pixar's weakest feature-length movie. But it really is a testament to Pixar when their weakest movie can still stand head and shoulders above many other companies' best works. However, the year this movie was released was also the year Shrek from DreamWorks came out. Shrek ultimately won the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature over this movie, and I feel like that win was very much justified after looking back on this film. Despite its great imagination, energy, and wit, Monsters Inc. is ultimately a letdown thanks to its lackluster plot and characters. Monsters Inc. gets 3 stars out of 5. I definitely can't call Monsters Inc. a bad movie, not by any stretch of the imagination. If you enjoy it, then that's great. I'm glad that you could enjoy it more than I could personally, but that's not to say I didn't enjoy it. Like I said, there are some very good things about it, but I feel like the main reason it seems to get a free ride nowadays is because of nostalgia. Before I did this review, I asked a lot of people what they thought of Monsters Inc., and almost all of them who said they loved it said that they hadn't seen it for a very long time, so I think that's at least an interesting observation. Now, will Monsters University improve on this film's shortcomings? Well, if you're from the US, you'll probably already know, whereas I'm from the UK, so we have to wait a couple more weeks for that to be released, so look out for that review in the not too distant future. And if you want to be updated on that review, then be sure to subscribe, and while you're here, be sure to like this video, because it really helps me out if you could share it around as well. Leave a comment. What did you think of Monsters Inc? Do you think I was a little bit too harsh on it? Do you sort of see it the same way as I do? And do you think that nostalgia does sort of play a big part in this? Because I don't know many people who have watched it recently who say that they absolutely love it. And also, if you like this review, then be sure to check out my Man of Steel review, which you can find right here, as well as other videos I do, such as trailer reactions, which I'll be doing more of when more trailers are of course released. So like I said, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, and I shall see you guys next time.